Hello. I haven't made a video for a few days because I've been really busy working on the engine, so I thought it's time to give you a bit of an update on where I've got to. I think the last time I videoed it I just painted the engine with the engine enamel in silver, but I've been doing various bits and pieces since then, so I'm just going to go over the things that I've done. So I've removed the water pump. That's where the water pump goes in there. It mounts sort of here on these, and I've taken that off so that I can check it, and it seems fine. It spins fine. There doesn't seem to be any problem with it. The bearings and the seals seem to be okay, so that's good. And obviously I'm going to give it a good clean up and paint it with enamel, silver enamel, the same as the engine, and black on the outer bit. So that's where I'm at with the water pump. The other thing that I've done is I've removed the rear sprocket. That's where the rear sprocket goes. Sorry, not the rear sprocket, the front sprocket that goes on the gearbox. So as you can see, I've removed that, and that's enabled me to give this sprocket cover, which is about the dirtiest bit on the whole engine, which is usually the case with bikes because chain lube tends to build up in here and lots of dirt builds up and it gets very, very dirty, and it was incredibly dirty. I've used several wire brushes and screwdrivers and rags and white spirit and everything to get that all cleaned out, and then as you can see I've painted it all with the same silver engine enamel inside the sprocket cover there. Also, when I did the enameling before, I'd kind of missed this corner because the water pump was in the way, because the water pump kind of fills most of this corner. So with that out of the way, I've been able to paint all of these bits around here as well, and kind of under the sprocket cover, and also around the back. I hadn't painted around the back, so that's all been done now. So basically the whole of the engine has been enamelled. I've also given much of the rest of it kind of a second coat, so I noticed there were one or two bits sort of around the odd corners and things where I'd kind of missed, and there's like, you know, you could kind of see the original aluminium through the paint. So basically I've kind of gone over it and given it a real good a really good coating with engine enamel, and it does look actually really good now. It's looking really, really good. I don't know kind of obviously quite what it looks like in a video, but in person it does look pretty good. So what else have I done? I've done various kind of mechanical bits and pieces. I fitted the APE Camchain tensioner. That's that there. Now it's not actually tensioned correctly at the moment because you need the engine in the bike so that you can actually run the engine to get it to the correct tension, but it is installed. So I've removed the old tensioner obviously, and made up a gasket from gasket rubber, and fixed it with the Allen bolts that came with it. That's the lock nut there that locks it in place once it's tensioned. So once it's tensioned, I'll tighten that down again. That lock nut there is used to adjust the tension. You pretty much just do them finger tight and in about a quarter of a turn, I think, from what I gather from the internet. Again, if anyone knows anything about APE tensioners, if you've got any tips or pointers, feel free to put that in the comments. So with the tensioner in place, I've now taken the cable ties that were holding the chain in place. I've taken them off. Also what I've done is I've scraped these surfaces with a razor and a flat blade screwdriver to get all the old paper gasket off, because Honda uses these kind of paper gaskets. I don't know about other manufacturers, but when I removed the engine cases it left some of the paper gasket behind, so that needed to be scraped off because it was really well stuck onto the surface. So that surface is now really nice and smooth. If you run your finger down it, it's just perfect. So that's that, and the same with the clutch cover. So I've also painted these covers black, so they're ready to go on as soon as I'm ready to do that. What else have I done? I've also fitted the starter motor. The starter motor, as you can see, I've painted black. it looks really good against the silver. It kind of gives a nice kind of contrast. I've fitted that using these Allen bolts. These are the stainless steel Allen bolts that I got off eBay that I made a video about earlier on, and they're an absolutely perfect fit. They went in really well, and I think they look really good, kind of the stainless steel bolts against the black starter motor. So I'm going to use the same bolts for all the engine cases. All these engine cases are going to be fitted with stainless steel bolts. That's the plan. I've also cleaned up this surface here. I did that last night, and it's again, it's come up pretty good. It's actually, there's a little bit there that I've missed, so I need to get that before I put the case on. But the surface feels really smooth, which obviously is what you want, because if it's not smooth, if there's any kind of debris there or anything, when I put the gasket on and then put the case over, then it would leak oil if there's even just a tiny little bit, or just hold the gasket away from the surface and let the oil leak out. So it's important that it needs to be really smooth around there. So I'm kind of getting there with that. So the engine cases will be on probably by the end of this week. I should have the engine cases fitted and hopefully the water pump back on. So the other thing that I've done is I've fitted the valve cover. Again, this is, as you can see, it's been painted black, and I think it looks really good. It kind of contrasts nicely with the silver. I like it. I like the kind of high contrast look, sort of silver and black, or black and white, or that kind of thing. I think it looks pretty smart, makes it look pretty sharp. So that's the valve cover. Again, that's been painted with engine enamel like the rest of the bits. It's been installed with a proper gasket. I didn't actually make the gasket for the valve cover. The reason is that the valve cover has these like end caps that go over the sort of semicircular end cap things built in that go over the end of the camshaft, and obviously I can't really make up my own gasket given that, so I used a proper gasket for it, which I think was about less than a tenner off eBay. I've used the original bolts as well. The reason I've used the original bolts is these bolts have a kind of flange, so I can't really just put an Allen bolt in there. It needs to be the proper bolt. They have kind of like a metal and rubber washer that goes underneath them to seal them. So and then when I put the gasket in, I just basically smeared the surface with a bit of grease and put a bit of grease on the top of the gasket as well, so both sides are greased, and then just sat it down. Putting the grease on just means that the gasket just sits perfectly on the surface and makes a good seal. I mean, you can also use like gasket sealant, like blue Hylamar or something like that. I've used things like blue Hylamar and Granville gasket sealant in the past to seal gaskets, and they do work okay. They will keep the engine oil in, or whatever fluid it is, antifreeze or whatever. But the problem with it is you get kind of, unless you're really careful, you get little blobs of it along the joint, and it just looks rubbish. So I decided this time I wasn't going to use gasket sealant. So what I've done instead is I've just used grease. Just put a smear of grease on the surface, on the engine surface, and then a smear of grease all the way around the valve cover. The valve cover actually has a groove. There's a groove that runs along the gasket surface, and the gasket actually fits into the groove. So basically I just kind of filled that groove all the way around. Excuse me. Just filled that groove all the way around with grease, and then just stuck the gasket into it, and the gasket stuck quite nicely with the grease. Obviously grease doesn't hold something in the same way that glue does, but it kind of like, it just kind of holds it in place, if you know what I mean. And then just greased the other surface as well, bolted it down, and it seems to, it just looks really good. It just looks kind of really neat. Because the gasket's black and the cover's black, you can't really see the gasket, so you just kind of see the black against the silver. So I'm really pleased with that. I'm kind of really pleased with the way it's coming on. I think it's looking really good. It's kind of looking very clean, and it's kind of, I'm getting to the stage where I've nearly finished working on the motor itself, so I think probably this weekend I'm hoping to have the chassis installed on top of the engine. I've actually ordered some bolts. I need engine mount bolts to install the chassis, obviously, and I've not been able to get them off eBay. So what I've done is I've ordered them from my local Honda main dealership, and I was expecting them to be really expensive, being a kind of genuine Honda part. But they're actually only a few pounds, so that's not too bad. So I've ordered the 3 bolts, the 2 for this side and the 1 for that side, and then there's also that engine mount to go in, but I've already got the bolts and bits and pieces for that. That has like a sleeve that goes through there, and then a steel rod that goes through the middle, and 2 brackets, and then the brackets bolt onto the inside of the chassis, and I'll probably just use my stainless steel bolts for that, so that should be fine. So that's pretty much it. So like I say, the plan is to get the chassis on this weekend, and once the chassis is on, then I can start working on all the bits and pieces, like installing the radiator, installing the carbs, working on the electrics, etc, etc. So it's actually going to start to get really interesting, because they're going to get into the more technical stuff. Up to this point it's been mostly kind of cleaning parts, painting parts and that kind of thing, but going forward it's going to be more kind of mechanical and electrical work. Installing things, setting things up, wiring things up, etc, etc. So that's pretty much it for now. Thanks again for watching, and do keep coming back, because there are going to be loads more videos that I'm going to be putting up over the next sort of month or two as I sort of gradually build up the bike. Alright, thanks again.